Okay, we're live on Facebook and we are recording to the cloud.
And did you mute everybody, John?
Yes, now I did, and you can unmute yourself, Mark.
Thanks, John. And so great to see all of you here again. It's been a while, I think about a month. And there will be another month from this one till the next one being my birthday party. Hope to have a bunch of folk from all over the world reading one or two of my poems and most of their own. So it's kind of become a tradition now at Lit Balm. We celebrate my birthday party every year. It seems very self-absorbed and a little bit, I don't know, narcissistic, but it wasn't intended that way. Anyway, it's just for fun. So, but we're delighted today to have an amazing group of features. We're so happy our co-founder, Larissa Shmailo, is going to be reading as a feature today. We haven't seen her in a long time. We have Renard Allen, who is an award-winning author of 6 books of fiction and poetry. Pablo Medina, born in Cuba, a translator, but also a writer of many elements in his own right, and just came out with a new collection of poetry. Sarah Stickney, whose first full-length poetry collection, A Lion, came out earlier this year with Mad Hat Press. And Katie Peterson, thank you all for being here. But before we move to the feature, I'm going to introduce one of my co-hosts, who I'm always delighted to see out of his Brooklyn apartment, Jeffrey Cyphers Wright, who actually received his MFA studying with Allen Ginsberg. Jeff is known as a new romantic poet. He's also a publisher, critic, eco-activist, impresario, filmmaker, puppeteer, and artist. He's the author of 19 books of verse, including Blue Lyre and Party Everywhere. His poems have appeared in many journals, including the Cafe Review, New American Writing, and Posit, also in many anthologies. His most recent work is a book of sonnets, an artwork called Doppelgangster, which came out from Mad Hat Press fairly recently. And he also, Jeff also just won the Sir Vision James Tate Prize, and he publishes Live Mag.
Thank you, Mark. It's good to see everybody again. And I look forward to today's reading. Before I start, I just was going to say something. Oh, hey, I was going to say something too. I was going to say, hey, Mark, what you doing, man? How are you? Excuse me? Oh, you know what? Just a minute. Mark, I've been practicing my bird calls. Listen, man.
Oh, you got a haiku?
Pretty good. Oh, wow. Whistling puppet. Yeah, man. Oh, listen, Mark. Also, I want to let you know, I wrote a sonnet for your contest again for the most amazing poet who ever lived. And it's a haiku because I've been studying the Korean women from the 12th century that Kenneth Rexroth translated. And so I wrote this for you about fireflies in Nashville rise into the ruddy night. Unknown stars haunt honky tonks. Oh, thank you, Rufus. Thank you. Oh, you're so welcome. Are you going to read your sonnet now, Jerry? Okay, Rufus. Thank you.
Thanks, Rufus.
Thank you, Rufus. Excuse me. So this, summer kind of lazy times. I just went with it, right? So this is called Last Chance Gasp. The Con Ed clock droops. Its arms pooped out and stuck at 6:32. Alas, I too lapse into lassitude. Indulgence, so dolce. Mexican sunflowers hang with me anyway, their thirsty faces barely holding up. Clouds ravish the sky with powder puffs. The nation all in a dither about its withering mirror. there's no place like Nome, unless you're an elf hunter like me. Geared down, we have a box of black box. A party salvage operation is underway. That being said, our work is cut out. Your mission involves revolving around each hour and teaching time how to count. Thank you so much again now for that pleasure of sharing your company. And now want to welcome the hostess with the mostest, currently traveling the world as often is the case. And Cassandra Atherton is an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books, which is amazing considering she's only like 18 years old. And she's currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote Prose Poetry and Introduction and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She is commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. There she is, Cassandra.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely intro. Yes, I'm a bit scrambled. I'm a bit all over the time zones. I've been home, I think, for 2 days. So it's wonderful to be back and to see everyone on Lit Balm. So of course, I'm going to read a prose poem. It's called Hill of the Muses, and it is based on one of my trips to Greece, to the ruins that I went to. Hill of the Muses. Under baking orange skies, we ascend the curved stones to the summit. Weighed down by water bottles, my hair is a moist bird's nest on my neck's slick nape. In the shadow, a Philopappus monument, you search for the shrine to the muses, running your hands over rocks like a dream in braille. I step into the sun. I'm a shell ready to be fired. I'm gunpowder in the night. On the crest of the hill, I fit myself into muses' niches. Filled with men's fingerprints and howlings, the shrine is only rubble and dust. In empty boxes, I'm cast in sun-bleached stone as the 10th muse. I sit on the altar and wait for you to run your hands over my body's nooks, but you don't recognize me. So I take a tiny stone from the cairn as a reminder of ruin and hold it up to the sky. I'm a powder keg. My words burn through your pages. And now, the thing that I've missed the most lately is introducing Mark Vincennes. Mark Vincennes is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published over 40 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently, The Pearl Diver of Urun Mani, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, The Mayfly Codex, 3 Telltale Love Signs, Thieves' Canto, The Visitation, a novelette, and Rocket Ship to the Andromeda Galaxy. Forthcoming poetry collections are Ironclad with Spite and Dival, Spells for the Wicked, Unlikely Books, and No More Animal Poems with White Pine Press. So you can see Mark is very lazy and rests on his laurels quite often. Mark is also a prolific translator and has translated from, the regulars know it, German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translations, most recently in Audible Blue Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, you know his name, Klaus Mertz, and it won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of the Stella Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He's lived all over the world. Join in from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are still more brown marmorated stink bugs, Ailanthus webworm moths, and Queen Alexandra's bird wings than bipedal earthlings. So Mark, you threw that one at me with jet lag, and I think I just about got through it. Have you got a poem for us?
Did you notice that that rhymed, by the way?
No, 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 but I do now.
Okay, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to actually screen share. This is a preview of my chapbook, Rocket Ship to the Andromeda Galaxy. And it's very much a visual thing. Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Here we go. Rocket Ship to the Andromeda Galaxy. For every last Earthling orbiting their own space-time, some cooling perspective. Apparently, 1 billion years before Mother Earth bursts into a quadrillion fragments, we will be a world boiling over at 10,000 degrees. Some warming perspective. And thus, our fated ancestors, the last 10,000, shall be dozing in stasis for light years, waiting to populate another warming planet. Cerebral cortex, how quickly autumn burns through your face, how quickly winter pales. Neural integration, how you burst into sing-song when the sun appears behind your head like a halo, and the shadows at your feet dance like tiny gods. Almost a fortunate footnote, and no less so for not trying to. Non-living matter. As mountain streams begin to feed the soil, they resurface again in that moon-locked eon. Something like time and a god. What better way to get here than in golden armor on the backs of fire-breathing dragons? In such a fashion, one is portrayed as pertinent in the schemata of history. Better iconography. There will be statues and paintings and comparisons with tiny gods. No more time. There was no such clock. There was no such time. Failed nursery rhyme. As the butcher's wife dissected the room, the mice pranced ahead and then slipped into the oak skirting beneath the burning stove. Central nervous system. It was as if the tiny gods had mumbled, then tumbled straight through our essences like radiation through rock and mantle. A belief system. And no, our proteins were not connecting at first, but when we started praying, a new world was seeded from water and light. Natural neurotoxins. The air is warm and good here. The trees are heavy with love. A fresh start. Creatures swarm through the sky. Clouds gather in battle formations. And the last image, I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it is a constellation.
Is it the Crab Nebula or something?
No,
like?
it's the Pillars of Creation, excuse me. Was taken by James Webb Space Telescope in 2022 and is located in the Serpens constellation, which is around 7,000 light years from where we currently reside. Just to give you an idea, from here to the Andromeda Galaxy is 16 trillion miles. So, but apparently, I don't know, 2 billion years from now, we will actually be colliding with the Andromeda Galaxy. So it should be an interesting event. And now I'm delighted to introduce the first of our featured readers today, our co-founder of Lit Balm, Larissa Shmailo, who is a poet, novelist, translator, writing coach, editor, and critic. Larissa is the author of 2 novels and 6 collections of poetry. including more recently Dora Laura from Unlikely Books. Larissa's poetry album Exorcism won the New Century Best Spoken Word Album Award, and tracks are available from iTunes, Spotify, and so on. Larissa's work has appeared in the anthologies Measure for Measure, an anthology of poetic meters from Penguin, Words for the Wedding from Penguin, Contemporary Russian Poetry from Dalkey, and Choice Words from Haymarket, and many others. Larissa is also the original English language translator of the first futurist opera, Victory of the Sun, which was performed at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Garage Museum of Moscow, the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and many other places. Larissa also edited the anthology 21st Century Russian Poetry, and she facilitates workshops of formal poetry and writing resilience. And Larissa's mission in life is to help mentally ill people through writing. Please find out more about her on our website, which I'll post in the chat in a bit. Welcome, Larissa.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Great to see everybody. Hello, how are you? It is great to be back. And I will start with a poem called Personal. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what makes you fickle. I want to know what makes you stick. Tell me, which ion propels you, which soothsayer spells you, which folk singer trills you, which hardwood distills you, which downward dog twists you, which protest resists you, which neural net fires you, which siren desires you, which villanelle sings you, which jailbreaker springs you, which Uncle Sam wants you, which calculus daunts you, which lullaby lulls you, which confidence gulls you, which apple you'll bite from, which hither you'll welcome. What makes me? Forget the right answers, consult necromancers, allow the forbidden, ignore the guilt-ridden, unlearn all the learning, embrace this new burning, to know what makes you tick. The more you leave, the more I want you back. When you return, our love life seems to lack. Believing you are unassailable, I yearn for you to be available. And then you come, I cannot be more bored. I like your leave, but not your coming toward. Your distance charms, disarms my eager heart, but close, I wish we were again apart. Do stay away and I'm forever wrapped, but now you leave me empty, dull, and sapped. So go away, I'll love you as before. Love's ebb and flow is tricky as a horn. He called me fat. He called me fat and I cringed, not at the insult as such, not much of one, but at the verbal dull, the paucity of adjective, the pervading mental lull, the flap of his limp and flaccid gums, the lack of hearty fun. Fat, why fat? I cried. Surely round would move things up a pitch or two, and gargantuan would do, and corpulent construe the adipose goo at hand. Why fat, O fatuous man? Call me beefy, blimp, or bulging, term me bovine, bull, or burly, name me chunky, roly-poly, or inflated as your nog. O linguini, limp and little, your linguistic torpor bores, ignores the 25,000 words that Joyce and Shakespeare forged and do not hoard, but your words overall are snores. As I eat my s'mores, let's resume. I am thick-set, paunchy, heavy as the synapses in you. I am wider than a canyon in the broad primordial stew. That you fraud, I am queen of unburnt calorie, the rarest elephantine, the mobiest of sentient beings, the diet doctors bought, my stockiness drives diet stock, my pudge the script of pills. I am larger than Niagara and the Roman 7 hills. Dormant doormat, there are spas of verdant bliss for me, but no school for fools like you. You are but a speck of rotten lard, a granule of mere sand. I am high and vast and infinite, dimensionally great and grand. My dead. My husband lost his shirt at cards. Insolvent, he then drowned. In slick Cancun on our honeymoon, years now, it still astounds how fast a living hell can turn a life around. My godchild told me pointedly if she were to attempt to die that she'd succeed at once, a word she quickly kept, and took 100 opiates and drifted to her death. My punk rock pimp, a crush of mine, loved theater and art. He sodomized and strangled one young man close to his heart, then packed a bag of bondage toys and left for foreign parts. Before her death, my mother called and calmly sat me down. If she could do it all again, she'd have no children, none. She lived her life in anger and despite us, all alone. My father drank and slept around. He was a well-liked guy. He said, I love you once to me the night before he died. Was there a feeling come too late or panic in his eyes? Memento mama. I haven't passed that dream of wisdom, the borders you crossed through. I can't translate the language I thought I knew. I see a meaning watching you die, hold it in my hands like a graying sigh. This lock of hair which I comb and tie, I kiss the head which hears my no, and meet your eyes and say, don't go, and leave you to this tongue of dread. This is me, it cries, this is me, and I die. We will all speak these words in this way, and then, till then, what shall I say? Schrodinger's cat is alive. MRI won't be up till Thursday. Waiting is a practice sense. Anyone can face life's dangers. Takes the strong to bear suspense. MRI with contrast or not, little magnets map the brain. Soon I'll feel my body changing, entering another plane. All I am is quarks and gluons, energy and impulse filled. There is no material realm here, and these quanta can't be killed. So I wait without much straining. Courage comes from quanta too. I'm in the field of every being. Parts of me are parts of you. Don't look toward a grave to see me. My old soul has other plans. All of me will dance with helium. I'll be sun and leaves and grass. Scarcity. Listen, if you wait and don't want, if you want but don't take, if you take but don't use, if you use but don't care, if you care but not much, the petty demon comes. The petty demon says, not all of you are wanted, not everyone is needed. A few may be accepted. There's scarcity, you see. There are no loaves and fishes, not for the likes of you. A few baguettes for babies, some caviar for me. There's just enough to shit and sleep, but not enough for thee. The petty demon shrieks, time is money, sell short, eat to win, assume the position. In the world, in the angry material world, there are men who are not men, men whose imaginations never rise above the box and plane, whose imaginations squat upon the positions of power. If the petty demon bothers you, here's what you say. Tell him, I don't know about your lawyer's fees, your MDs, your CEOs, your deep freeze. I do know that the blind man is perfect, that there's more to life than irony and squealing like a stuck pig, that the truth is hard, but you can stand on it, that time isn't money or a threat, but a gift. As you assume your position in the world, do not love men who are not men, whose imaginations never rise. Walk tall, walk with God. assume nothing, take a position. And I'll end with this, which is in dipodic meter, in Paran. I grew up wild and reckless in the land of desert nomads, in the arid lands that lie near the promised land in Egypt, that land of milk and honey they were saving for my brother, and the land of Pharaoh's bondage where my mother's kin were born. I lived my youth near Canaan and the slaving lands of Egypt. I lived my life an outcast in the desert of Paran. I grew up wild and stubborn, my hand against my father, at war with all my kinfolk, my kin at war with me. I grew up wild and skittish, like a scared colt in a sandstorm. I laughed at mules and camels that never could break free. But I learned to run in sandstorms, and how to eat my water, and how to find oases, and how to take the heat. I learned to talk to demons, to tempters, and to genies. I learned to talk to devils, to outcasts just like me. I learned to love and pity my younger brother Isaac when they took him to the slaughter, not even asking why. God bade me make the manna for Isaac and his children. My demons said they'd be here, 12 tribes of them someday. In this land of desert nomads, near the promised land in Egypt, near the land of milk and honey, in the desert of Paran. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larissa, and thank you for, as a co-founder, joining us again. Hope to see you again soon. And tell us a little bit more about your Writers Resilience program. You there, Larissa?
Yes, I am. Writing Resilience is a workshop for people, writers actually, affected by trauma, addiction, and/or mental illness. We write to increase coping, but also to come up with fiction, poetry, essay collections, or memoirs. The group is warm, supportive, and highly generative. And we opened this August 4th, and I hope some of you will consider joining us.
Okay, Larissa, feel free to put the link in the chat so that folks can join in. Thanks so much. And now I'm delighted to introduce Jeffrey Renard Allen, who's an award-winning author of 6 books of fiction and poetry, including the celebrated novel Song of the Shank, which was a front-page review at both the New York Times Book Review and the San Francisco Chronicle. Jeff's other accolades include the Chicago Tribune's Heartland Prize for Fiction, the Chicago Public Library 21st Century Award, the Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence, a grant in Innovative Literature from Creative Capital, a Whitting Writers Award, Guggenheim Fellowship residencies at Bellagio, UCross, and Gentile Arts, and fellowships at the Center of Scholars and Writers, and the Johannesburg Institute for Advanced Studies, which is where I think Jeff found his second home, Johannesburg. And so it is Johannesburg, right, Jeff? You're probably on mute.
It is, yes. Yes.
And he's also the founder and editor of Taint magazine, and is the Africa editor for the Evergreen Review. Jeff's latest books are the short story collection Fact Time and the memoir An Unspeakable Hope that he co-authored with Leon Ford. Making his home in the United States and Johannesburg, South Africa, Jeff is at work on the memoir Mother Wit. Find out more about him at his website, which I'll post in the chat. Welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here with all of you. And it's a particular honor in that one of my professors and mentors is here with us, Michael Ananias. So I would like to send a special thanks to Michael for all that he's done for me and all that I learned from him. So I'm going to be reading from, well, I should say I've been working on this memoir since early 2000, right before the pandemic started. And I'm going to read a section of it. The memoir is called Motherwit. And what I'm reading from was actually a section published in Grant about 4 years ago. So I'm going to just read a bit of that. Dimly understood, he saw his train speeding towards his spanking new counterpart, a game of chicken, although he knew the other train could not move out of his path. Released the high guttural horn and warning, nowhere to run, nothing he could do other than listen to the friction of the brakes and the rhythmic stopgap clanging of wheels against rails and weight. On impact, his older, sturdier built engine tunneled through the newer model. Sound of metal tearing through metal, structure reduced, steel veering away in long lines. The second train at Calabash, spilling out commuters, both the living and the dead. In the aftermath, the air was left shaking. Sound dwindled, a weighing silence. For a hairbreadth, I'm caught in the wreckage until I manage to follow the calligraphic lines of the rails through the clanging swirl, pull myself free and take on flesh again. Lurched away, all still in the room, save for the sound of the television, a modest-sized black and white model. A few years still before my mother and I would own our first color console. Thinking back in the root of my mind, I see the television set, a hollow, bulky box with faux wood paneling, gray images splashing inside and gurgling sound. Almost 50 years have passed, yet I still hear the announcer's voice reaching me as if from underwater, another dimension. I was experiencing the realization of my greatest fear as a child, that my mother would die, leaving me all alone. My mother often commuted on this train, the IC Illinois Central, to the Loop on weekday mornings, then transferred to a second train for Winnetka, the northern suburb where she made $35 a day working as a maid. Day work, she and her friends called it, working as a maid for a wealthy white family. That morning, October the 30th, 1972, she'd readied herself as usual to the rhythms of easy listening, sliding out from the small radio we kept on the kitchen table. At 7 o'clock sharp, she left through the back kitchen door, a morning like any other. I proceeded to bathe, dress, cook breakfast before sitting down on the living room couch with my overflowing plate of food to watch the Ray Rayner show. Speed eating and drinking through my meal, glasses of milk and orange juice, 4 slices of well-buttered toast, 2 eggs over easy, and 4 strips of bacon, covered by a collapsed tint of maple syrup. I was 10 years old, tall and skinny for my age, and I had a voracious appetite. A special news bulletin brought my attention to a standstill. At the news, I put my plate aside and remained seated on the couch, mulling over my options. My mother would usually arrive at work around 9 o'clock. So rather than leave for school, I decided I would remain at home and call her employers at the appropriate time and ask to speak to her. Determined, I sat waiting, seconds and minutes shaping the 4 corners of the room. An hour passed. I needed to pick up the phone, a place to call, but I could not. Craning forward from my place on the couch, I stared into the bubble glass of the television and burrowed inside myself, listening, watching, and waiting, trying to bring the facts into focus. The location, the collision had happened a short distance away from Michael Reese Hospital. Almost 40 years later, in February 2008, my mother would have her right leg amputated below the knee at this hospital, losing both her mobility and independence. The number of dead at the moment, 1:33 p.m., and the last 3 victims were pulled from the train wreckage. I can envision in my imagination firefighters and EMTs looking for survivors, combing through twisted, smoking metal. Because I had the mind of a writer even then, my imagination drew up grisly images that fleshed out the sanitized news reports. I sat through each attitude moment, my thoughts speeding up until I managed to calm down, only for them to speed up and cycle through my fear again. On her days off from work, Sundays and holidays, my mother and I would catch the IC to the loop, a smooth floating adventure, quiet and comfortable, preferable to the bus or L, and quicker, even if more expensive. I would watch the South Side unfurl outside the rattling window, houses and buildings soaring up and expanding in geometrical infinity. My spirits high, how exhilarating. Then see Lake Michigan expand in vast offering, a flash of reflections and more until we slanted into the last station downtown. Buoyant, we might spend the day browsing the galleries at the Art Institute of Chicago. No matter how poor we were, my mother knew it was important to expose me to the larger world. The Art Institute of Chicago then spent some time in Carson Perry Scott or Marshall Fields, each department store housed in a spacious, beautiful building with marble walls and floors, stained glass, and other choice features, the best architecture that Chicago had to offer. Then we would go over to Wabash Avenue under the shadows of the L and eat dinner at Wendy's, my mother's favorite fast food joint. The outing might end at Fannie Mae's with a small purchase of high-end caramel chews, turtles, and pecan rolls to enjoy on the IC back home. We were allied, a nation of two. Her allegiances were to me. People often remarked how we looked alike, how we argued like husband and wife. That evening, I heard my mother's heavy step climbing the carpeted wooden stairs, heard her pause on the landing before our front door, then a key turning the lock, readying myself, praying. The door opened, and there she was, my mother. Another day, another dollar. Wobbly, I stood up from the couch. Dog-tired, she seemed to take some time to become aware of me. She glanced at me and promptly shut and locked the door behind her, not overly concerned about the TV blaring the news. I think I came towards her in a daze and held her, glad to find her body charged with life. She was a fleshy woman, just short of being fat, her arms thick, her hips branching wide. I was almost as tall as she was. In a year or two, I would outgrow her, and she would often joke with her friends that she had to stand on a chair to whoop me. I buried my face in her bosom. She pulled me in, but she did not hold me for long. She was supportive, loving, but not affectionate. She guided me back to the couch, and we sat for some minutes in silence, me breathing deeply, trying to console myself. "Are you wheezing?" she asked. I was not, but perhaps her words produced a dramatic effect on me, and my lungs became more labored. Wheezing, this was her world, a poor single mother with a sickly, asthmatic child. No small burden at the time when the medical community didn't know how to effectively treat the disease. Hours and days at my bedside, convalescence in the form of nights of a humidifier humming out cool air, Vicks vapor rub slathered across my chest, or my mother at my gurney in an emergency room. Already an anxious and melancholic child, the train crash unloosed something in me, vague broodings. In the weeks that followed, I would lay in bed at night, feeling like I was made of black air. At any time, death could claim me. Worse, it could claim my mother. She did what she could to help comfort my fears. Then another disaster that December, an airline crash in the Everglades. I fixated on the reports, my mind looped through images of alligators springing up from black waters to feed on the survivors. But that was not the worst. A few days later, on the morning of January the 1st, 1973, I awakened to the news that Roberto Clemente, one of my favorite baseball players, had perished in a plane crash off the shores of Puerto Rico during an aid mission. It was the same tale being repeated. See me and my mother standing at a bus stop on a cold winter night, my mother holding me close to her body, my face buried inside her wool coat. A scene frozen in time by a brutal Chicago winter, even if the weather was warmer than usual, the temperature above average. My mother protected me from the elements and doing her best to protect me from an uncertain world. Gospel hymns carried my mother through each day, songs of hope she sang to herself at home, songs that sustained her belief that God would safeguard and deliver us to the promised land of better times. But her faith felt foreign to me. We had been shortchanged. My mother struggled mightily to provide for us, the world cruel and unjust. By age 7, I started to wonder why God would allow good people like my mother to suffer, and why did he allow foreign substances inside me to constrict my breathing, asthma, allow that constant surging in the cell of my being that filled me with the feelings of Black negativity. Fragile body, fragile mind. Photographs revealed that by age 9, I had stopped smiling, my mouth set to prevent others from viewing my buck teeth. This sense that whoever lived in the spotlight, the bright circle of public scrutiny, all eyes on me, even as I was given over to a sense that life was an elaborate stage set of actors and props, everything around me a clever performance. The childish spell was broken when Bruce Lee died in July 73. 2 weeks after my 11th birthday, a tragedy that had unexpected consequences for me. I'd heard much about the martial arts icon, but had never seen his films. That opportunity came several months later. One morning, I caught the IC to the loop as I did each Saturday, but instead of attending my youth class at the Art Institute of Chicago, I paid $2 to attend a Bruce Lee marathon, playing at a once opulent movie house. I entered the crowded theater, walked across a floor sticky beneath my shoes, and for the better part of a day sat in musty, tattered velvet seat, gazing at the mammoth screen, watching and rewatching Fist of Fury, The Chinese Connection, and Enter the Dragon. Every punch, kick, and growl, the planet in my consciousness changed. Even at that age, I operated under the discipline of reading everything I could about any person or subject of interest. A scholar's brain, Bruce Lee was no exception. Through Lee, my worldview expanded, took on new dimensions. So compellingly did I envision a possibility for my life and his that I decided to model myself after him, eat what he ate, train the way he trained. All that was impossible given that I frequently suffered exercise-induced asthma attacks, study and master every art of combat the way he had. And likely, I would shake up the world and die in my prime. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. That was amazing. Is Pablo Medina in the house? I don't seem to see him on the... All right. Let's move on and move to Sarah Stickney. Sarah Stickney, who's an award-winning poet and translator who lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico and Burnsville, North Carolina. Her co-translations of Eliza Biaggiani's selected poems, The Guest in the Wood, won the Best Translated Book Award for Poetry in 2014. And the more complete collection of Biaggiani's translated work, To the Teeth, was published in September 21. Sarah received a Fulbright grant for the translation of Albanian Italian poet Ghezim Khadadri, who in 2010, and has worked with him for over a decade, translating selections from all his major works. Sarah has published translations of the poetry of Vivienne Lamarck in literary journals and magazines, and her chapbook Portico was selected by Thomas Lux as a 2016 winner of the Emrys Prize annual competition. Mad Hat Press published her first full-length, A Lion. earlier this year. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who's here. Thanks to Jonathan and Cassandra and Mark for the Lit Balm series, and enormous thanks to Mark and Mad Hat for publishing this book, my first real book. I'm going to read maybe 4.5 poems. I'm going to start with a poem called Rye Flip. Late afternoon rain took me to a dim stool. The bartender cracked an egg on the dark wood between us and let it fall like a kissed mouth into her cool metal shaker. She left me and my golden drink alone. I think of sex as many times a day as they say a so-called man does. If the sun isn't watching, the moon is the pocked ground of my desires. When I bang through the dark to the bathroom at night, I draw back my lips to show it my finite animal teeth. Now I'm going to read a poem called Pomegranate. I'm going to find it. I lived in the beautiful city of Bologna for a while, and it was one of the first cities to have medical, it was one of the first cities to have a university. And one of the first things that a university was for was either law or medicine. Those were kind of the only things that in 1100 a person went to school for. And there are still some of the anatomical models that these medical students in the Middle Ages used, and they're beautiful to see. They're carved out of wood. So this is in some sense about that, given that no poem is actually about anything. Pomegranate. At the Medieval Anatomy Museum, a clitoris like a pomegranate seed waits in the 14th century wax woman who used to show medical students where a baby grows. Waits for what precise pleasure, I don't know. Apollinaire prefers the nose, but a seed bursts darker red inside the mouth. The beloved's mistake is thinking. I want to be alive, aliver than that. The bones of lions struck together make a fire, which is why I watch your face so closely. Nothing is to be despised, not even the entrails of animals. Give me a turning word, for I envy fish their movement and birds their bones of air. To be shaken like a drop where I cling by a bluer fire than the bluest sky, I undress and stand by the bed. I guess it was wax, actually, not wood, now that I read my own poem. I'm going to read a very short poem. I love in other people's books, when there's a very short poem, I think of David Blair, who's on here, as excellent at that. He'll write these beautiful, incredible, kind of like high wire, long-ish poems, and then suddenly there'll be a one-line poem in the book, and it's very exciting. So I wanted to imitate that. I think of this poem as funny, but you can be the judge of that. This is called Yellow. When other people say the word loneliness, I think, no, that's my word. Okay. I think I'm going to read two more poems. This poem is called The Moon in Point Shoes. And though I didn't think about it when I was writing it, I think that I sort of half stole the title from the excellent poet, David Rivard, who has a poem called The Moon in Time Lapse. And, you know, somehow that like got into me and came out a couple of years later. It was like, ooh, yeah, what a good idea. The moon's somewhere. Also, I love to defy the, you know, sort of general prohibition that a current poet should never talk about the moon. We should always talk about the moon. The moon in point shoes woos its chorus of clouds, delicate monster. It has been high and white since it rose, like a mother looking for a child's lost shoe. In the ditch park, a missing woman is tacked to a tree in a photocopy. Her age in the photo, 18 or 40. I could be 18 or 40 as winter dumps hormonal drugs into my veins. More interior days. Examine every detail like it's a choking hazard. You have the voice of someone alone in a big house, said Rosie. From room to room, I watch the moon move like the pit of a peach as the fruit rots away. I think of the next man. Of course, I want pleasure. But when I stole away to the guest bed alone to touch myself, it was so much sharper and thicker than the obliging shudder I produced for a partner. You're so handsome, I told his dog. Yeah, I also think that one's pretty funny. Okay, last poem. I don't know what to say about this. I really like the French philosopher Pascal, and most of the people I know who know him dislike him because, you know, in a way he's so dark, but I actually don't think he's I don't think he's as dark as other people think he is. I think he just wants us all to feel. So I think that's what I was thinking about when I wrote this poem. It's like an apology for Pascal. He probably wouldn't want anyone to speak for him. Salty or sweet. Red appears in the leaves like some Jesus come to preach the paradox of bright death. I can't believe in this life or the next that I will be as joyful as the swallows in their swooping dives. Life's not what I thought it would be, I keep whispering to friends, and they agree. We are all up at dawn, wandering the kitchen, bitter as pith. I miss the smell of snow when I was young, or the smell of snow plus the smell of dinner, which was the smell of home. Would that it might have pleased God to give us the power to understand everything through instinct and sensibility, says Pascal. Next time, I'm going to come back as an insect. I'll devote myself to building a small habitation in the last magnolia bloom in the magnolia tree by the pool on the last day the condo pool is open, please God. Thank you all.
Fantastic, Sarah. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're delighted to publish Sarah's newest book. I'll put a link after I get off again. Next, we hear from Katie Peterson, who was the person that introduced Sarah's book, and is also the author of Fog and Smoke, published in 2024. Her previous collections include Life in a Field, a collaboration with Young Su, and A Piece of Good News, a finalist for the Northern California Book Award. Katie is professor of English at UC Davis, where for the last 7 years, she has directed the creative writing program. Next year, she will be a visiting fellow at St. Edmund's Hall at Oxford University in England. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Mark, for welcoming me into this wonderful group of people. Some of you have seen my cat. There she is again, my spirit of poetry. And I was so happy to hear all these readings today. And I was thrilled to write an introduction for Sarah Stickney's new book, A Lion. And I thought I would just start by reading a paragraph from that introduction and a poem from Sarah's book. Because the best thing is when someone writes a book of poetry and then you hear it in your voice, right? You get to make the poems yours. And I love Sarah's book so much because she talks about lofty matters in a plain voice, and plain matters in a lofty voice somehow at the same time. And there's this wonderful play between things that are very conceptual and philosophical and things that are downright silly. So here's a paragraph from the introduction. A Lion, Sarah Stickney's debut collection, says, be interested in women, be interested in what they do. This includes what they do with and to men. In Stickney's poems, women metamorphose, they exercise their right to change. And then I mentioned this poem that I wanted to read first from A Lion. And I want to just also thank Mad Hat because they published so many of my favorite books in the last few years. Such a great list of humans writing and doing important work that Mad Hat is supporting. This poem has the wonderful title, Reader, I Married Him, and it's from Sarah Stickney's A Lion. Reader, I married him. Redder, I mangled him with my nails. Ravished, I Maplethorped him. Revelator, I mazed him. Or rather, I martyred him, rendered him unto Caesar. Ref, I maxed out the clock. Renter, I amortized. I realized I misunderstood him completely. Ragdoll that I am, I merged with him. Ravenous, I munched and munched as I thought of him. Reckless, I margaritaed to revenge myself. Rolfer, I mashed the flesh. Rancid, I minced and pickled. Rampant, I manxed him. And oh, Romeo, I unmanned him. In revels, I maimed us both. Radical, I mapped each lie and line until there was nothing left to mar. I came out with a book this year too, and I wanted to read a poem from the book in which Sarah Stickney appears. So you'll all have to guess where she appears in this poem. The poem has a lot to do with the feeling in California in the last 4 years or 5 of being always under the aegis of climate catastrophe through the increase in heat and the fires, and at the same time trying to continue talking to other people through this. And so the poem I'm going to read is about a couple of people going for a walk in the desert and doing what you do when you go for a walk in the desert, which is talking about Greek philosophy in your life. And it's the sort of thing I used to do all the time at a little school called Deep Springs College, which is one of the places in which Sarah and I have engaged in our very active friendship. And I guess the other things, the thing about the poem is if you've been to the desert, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't been, I hope you'll let the poem take you there. It begins with a quote from Plato, and in Plato's dialogues, there are always 2 people talking and sometimes a hidden third. And that aspect of a conversation is what this poem, the language of this poem and its mood is coming from. And the other thing about it is it's basically a series of very, very brief poems. And I was thinking about reading it, and then a couple of you today have talked about brief poems and how wonderful they are. So my apologies if this reads like a long poem. It's intended as a series of small ones. The walk to the road when dinner was over. It's a strange image, he said, and strange persons you're telling of. They're like us, I said. Plato, the Republic. Together we watched the stars come out in their inequality. Venus at the edge of the valley and lower than Mars, who for a time upstaged the moon. I walk alongside the barbed wire, grateful for what I can't control, the alignment of your thoughts with mine. It's delicate. Men abandon women for years or socially, and do you think women can't feel it? But oh, the sweetness of one man overrides the rest, and no argument can undo it. Do you know the soul doesn't scatter? Isn't a thing that can be scattered? The soul doesn't scatter after death, but goes wherever it came from. So it matters when you die if you've tried to have an imagination. Most men say they would give birth if they could. When you are old, you say, you'll go to your children in their households with tools until you can't. You're going further, the place in the mind where memory gets kept. Go if you need to. One lamb escaped from the slaughter. She's in the pen for the whole summer, a whole Sierra in her eyes at sunset. It is not advice I give you, but the kind of blessing that comes from the bewildered heart. If you want to walk through a field of flowers, you must also walk at night. The friends you lost, like bodies buried, navigate the earth. They're walking, or they're at a dinner party and you are furthest from their mind. You can always look at the moon, crescent moving into Leo, and somehow this is good for you. You can do things to the moon in the desert. You can make it stand still. You can make it move. You climbed the mountain with me, a recovering moralist. You wanted to stay on the path. I wanted to find it. November, making a list of people who can be trusted. The one who said the owl's who woke her up from a dream of a winged horse. I trusted the poet who wrote, death is harder for the dying, though it hurts the living more. The place you imagine people go when all of this is over, no one lies there. No one misleads you the way they do on earth. I wanted to know how to behave when the worst isn't over, but the best hasn't shown up yet. I don't believe the argument ended. Try to be good versus say what's true. I'm standing in the dead center, that place called the middle distance, taking the place of heaven, the mountains we could die in if we traveled without water. Sound rustles through the ranch. Don't blink. The beautiful is sometimes the good. Don't get excited. Not all the time. They won't say thinking was the only thing I did. I metabolized what other people thought into the facts of what they felt. There's no one for miles. That road leads nowhere, into the mountains, to an old mining claim, populated on paper, given a mayor, used for a voting scam. In the time of miracles, you could change your mind by falling off a horse. This isn't that time. We could just become shapes on a night like this. We could walk into space and become clouds. They will say to us, what did you do in those days to survive? We married each other. Thanks.
I think we're thinking you were going to have another one for us. Have you got one more to finish the
That was
set?
amazing.
You want one more? Really?
Yeah, it was so good. We just one more, just one more.
Totally, that was so short. That was so short.
Yeah.
Oh, I just didn't want to take up too much time.
Oh, you're good.
But we were loving it. We've got to have one more.
Okay. But I don't want to read anything too long. So in the third section of my book, there are a number of poems about the experience of being with a young child as they're learning language. And this is one of those poems. And the thing I guess I want to say about it is that one of the most magical things about raising a child is that the little power struggle that you have with them, and how in these most unexpected moments, the power coordinates can reverse. And another way of saying this is just because you're taller doesn't mean you know very much, okay? Argument with the child. If you don't do this thing, you can't do the next thing, and I know you want to do the next thing. How do I know? I'll tell you when I'm older. Look at the flowers. Can you say wisteria? You don't want to say wisteria. You'd rather die is the look on your face. How can I fix it if you won't let me look at it? Look at something else while I touch it. Plant your eyes on that placemat of the world you love and don't move them until it stops hurting.
Loved it. Well, I just go straight into it. Mark, you usually have a few words before the open.
Yeah, I'm a little bit stunned with that kind of linguistic effect. It's kind of like, you know, the way I perceive poetry, really, every poet is their own bard. And, you know, a poem is a song. And some people have cadence and some people don't have cadence, and some people have drama and some people don't have drama. Katie kind of hits that middle thing, which is kind of almost deadpan, but not quite. So it's kind of got this subtle little flow. Well, thanks, Katie, really. But thank you, all of you. Thank you, Larissa, for coming again to the show that you helped found, and what a wonderful presentation you gave us today. And Jeff, thanks so much for coming. I don't know what happened to Pablo. I actually emailed him, but I didn't hear back, so we'll see. Sarah, thank you so much for your wonderful reading. And A Lion is an amazing book. Do get it. And Katie, thanks so much also for coming along. And now we hear from our technical director, John Wessick, who's a regional editor of the San Diego Poetry Annual. He's published hundreds of poems and stories in journals such as the Atlanta Review, Berkeley Fiction Review, I-70 Review, and many more. His most recent books are The Shaman in the Library and The Prague Deception. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mark. Here's a poem about the moon called Moon. Odin's lost glass eye, dot on the eye of a gang sign sprayed by a cosmic tagger. Croquet ball fit for use in St. Louis. A very painful kidney stone. Sphincter of a dog that swallowed the sun. Headlight of the largest SUV ever built, the Ford Metatron.
I was so in there. I was kidney stoning, and then you finished. But I loved it. I actually think, Mark, we should have a show dedicated entirely to moon poems. Partly because Cindy and I may have vodka shots every time someone says the word moon. But it would be fun. I agree with what's been said tonight. It's silly. We all love moon poems. Let's bring on more. Thank you, John.
Let's
Sorry,
go with
Mark.
Luna. Let's go, Luna.
Let's go, Luna. I love that. That can be our tag. John, no one does an open. No one begins it like you do. Absolutely loved it. Thank you. Next, we have Stephen. Stephen's been amazing in the chat tonight. So now we can listen to a poem from Stephen. Welcome.
All right. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who read. I love reading listening to your work, and thank you for listening to me. This is a true story. No names have been changed to protect anyone. Dear Jim, you probably don't remember me, but I'm hoping that this letter will jog your memory somewhat. It was about 2 years ago. I was walking down Lafayette Street in New York City, coming home from work. I was racing down the block in my usual manner, head down, navigating the imperfections in the sidewalk, when upon reaching the Time Cafe, I looked up for some reason and found you staring right at me. And I couldn't believe it because I've been a big fan for years. And there you are, staring at me. To be honest, Jim, I really didn't know what to do. It was such a surprising moment. Of course, I didn't expect to see you sitting outside there. My first inclination was to blurt out your name and say, "Good work, man," or something like that. My second was to put my head down and just keep walking, because last time when I approached Steven Tyler of Aerosmith over at the Central Park Zoo, I pretty much made an ass of myself. There he was with his wife, trying to enjoy a day at the seal pool when I began to approach him, pen and paper in hand. I hardly got to blurt out, "Hello," when he shot me that "Not now, man, look," and I veered off like a hang glider caught in an easterly flow. Let me tell you, I was embarrassed for days. Anyway, my point is, I didn't want to have that kind of experience with you, Jim. So I just smiled a little, put my head down, and kept on walking, and hoping that you did see me smile, and that this knowing little acknowledgement that you saw me would spark our connection, and that you would think of me for some project or maybe inspire you to something. Of course, as I was passing by, I was hoping to hear you calling me back, hoping to hear, "Hey, kid, come here," or something like that. But there was nothing, Jim. Not a word from you. And I continued on my way home, undiscovered, to a frozen pizza. You know, Jim, I saw Johnny Depp the other night in some piece of trash called The Astronaut's Wife, and I thought, man, what the fuck has happened to that guy? I've been watching him ever since his 21 Jump Street days, and he really used to have this element of cool about him. You know, I mean, on the show, you could see his transformation from pretty boy to rebel. The way he combed his hair and the clothes he wore, you could tell that the studio had nothing to do with that the man was making his own decisions as to how he would be perceived. But now, man, I don't know what's up with that guy. I think the last good thing I saw him was in Dead Man, and that was all you're doing, Jim. I mean, what's his trip these days anyway? Living in Paris, spouting Proust, wearing puffy shirts. How do you live the life of the expatriate in a gullible village? But here I am, stuck on Mott Street on a Friday evening. Day job, frozen pizza, no girl, no plans for the weekend. I guess I need to clean the apartment a bit. See if I can find permanent vacation at Kim's Video. I hope to see you again, Jim, on the 6 train. I saw you there a few weeks ago. We were sitting in the last car. You were reading the Times, but you did not look up at me. What a bummer. Like I said, I didn't want to approach you and have that embarrassing moment. Would be nice to say hello, though. Get me on your radar. Maybe next time. Yours in art, Steve Caldon.
Good work, man, as you said in your poem. That was so wonderful. Any poem with Steven Tyler and frozen pizza is more than okay with me, but it was so great. Thank you for sharing that with us. It was a wonderful moment in our open. But next we have, on his world domination tour, we're very pleased he made a stop off at Lit Balm. We've got DeWitt from his...
Oh my God.
That's it. You know it. You're everywhere. What have you got? I hope something meaty for us today.
I have an excerpt from a long poem I just finished called On Humanity. I think it's still standing. I cautioned my teenage daughter not to lose herself in social causes, since she admired our closest family friends who are activists for peace. You do what you can and live with what you can't, I told her. I did. I even cited the passage from Middlemarch about the roar of tragedies on the other side of silence and how it would overwhelm us unless we wore earmuffs like airline baggage handlers. Fortunately, she didn't listen to me. Or if she did, argued back over years to come with her dedicated, gifted life. From third world studies at Hampshire to a semester in Guatemala, travels to Europe, the Middle East, Fulbright to Bogota, Colombia, hip-hop writer and singer, painter, single mom, part-time ESL teacher in Chinatown, tending bar at Wally's Jazz Club, youth arts director at Hernandez Cultural Center. She started hip-hop exchanges between Boston and Cartagena youth, worked for Partners of the Americas, and moved to Cartagena with her daughter, then 4, met and married Diego, who shared her vision, embraced the gospel of hip-hop by KRS-One as her guide, had a second daughter, moved back near us, taught Spanish full-time in middle school, earned her MFA in public art, became instructor in Kingian nonviolence conflict reconciliation, was supported by her principal and town officials in moving our suburb towards a beloved community until a right-wing blogger blamed her for indoctrinating students with woke prop about the history of policing. Our local cops felt betrayed in the midst of budget hearings. An anonymous caller made threats. Super of school decided not to fire, but put a warning in her file for failing to ask parents' permission. After taking personal leave, she chose to resign instead. Risks working as a full-time artist. Art is one of the strongest bridges I know, her website reads, winding us between and across enemy lines, smudging borders like so much charcoal dust. Commissions, grants, and sales have been enough to provide for life and family without teaching. They live just up the street.
Amazing. I love that she resigned, but I also love Middlemarch and earmuffs. So it's a winner for me. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And you'll catch DeWitt everywhere. So join in the celebrations of his million manuscripts that are out there and being reviewed, and the many more to come. Next, we have May. We love May on Lit Balm. Welcome back. What have you got for us for the open, May?
Oh, let's see. As you know, or many of you know, I am originally from Hawaii, and I was raised speaking a Hawaiian Creole, Pidgin English. So I wrote a poem in Pidgin English. Next month, August 8th, will be the first anniversary of the fire that completely leveled Lahaina. So this poem is titled The Layers of Lahaina. The Layers of Lahaina. 1. Lahaina Layer 1. Ditches brought water from the mountains to canals, fish ponds, and one small lake, Mokuhina, home to King Kamehameha the Great and his court. Layer 2. Captain Cook arrived, his sailors' diseases being kill and kill until only one in a family of 10 Kanaka Maoli was left. Missionaries take over and insist the Vahinis cover up under Mu'umu'u and put Bibles in the hands of the Kane. Layer 3. Planters channeled the water away from Lahaina for their fields of pineapple and sugarcane. Mokuhina Pond dried up and was filled in. Layer 4. The plantations been go out of business. Asian grass was planted to control erosion. The tall, fast-growing grass been escape the fields and cover the land. Layer 5. Climate change, storms, dry spells, winds. Electricity wires been fall down and the bugger been spark in the dry grass. The winds push the flames all over Lahaina. The home smoke alarms, like hundreds of them, been all go off at the same time. People run to their cars and go, wiki wiki, but too late. Flames been eat the buildings all around the traffic jam on Front Street at the breakwater to the ocean. Layer 6. People burn up in their cars. Mothers and fathers turn to one another and to their keikis and grandparents sitting in the back seats and say, aloha. Aloha, my dears. Other people leave their cars, climb up the breakwater, and jump. They cling to one another through the night, fighting to breathe in all the smoke, holding on to one another when the tide come in and the waves been build. Friends say, I no gonna let you die today.
Wow, it's what we've come to expect from May, something really stirring. And this is not disappointed today either. And Captain Cook, we know all about Captain Cook in Australia too. So next we have a fan favorite. Patricia is up. You never quite know what Patricia has for us, but it's always something devastatingly good. Patricia, what do you got?
Thank you. Okay, we got the Brooklyn Brigade here. I have a new poem based on Amy Winehouse's song, Wake Up Alone. Okay, let me get into it. Life wasn't Dick and Jane. Their parents weren't hers. Their smiles as ungenuine as aspartame. Being solo wasn't her intention. The girl's parents unconsciously trained her to walk corridors alone, dodge the bullies, wear second-rate protection at school. She did learn to read, but not to think. Programmed from TV and books, she wished upon a fake star. Ate shoved up pipe dreams from Disney, not Grimm. When life threw rotten tomatoes, no fairy godmother came to her defense. It took years for her to develop. She learned to keep busy, forget those scars behind her name, had her fate of waking up alone. History and religion were subjective. Too many lies, cover-ups, omissions, and interpretations. Her place of business was no different. Her relationships just as tainted. She pulled off the sheets. His scent lingered like his lies, his loss of interest, his quick departure. No detergent could erase his deceit. She placed the sheets in a bag, brought it downstairs to be trashed. She kept busy and remade her bed. Moonlight bathed her room. Her eyes created tiny puddles on Egyptian cotton sheets. Another lesson learned, another scar added to her name. She retired for the night. Her fist hit the pillow before feathers flew for her satisfaction. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. It's so heartbreaking. She wished upon a fake star. And then, I mean, throwing out Egyptian cotton sheets. That's heartbreaking in itself. They're so beautiful, but such a wonderful moment. Thank you for reading for us. You're always a fan favorite here.
It's the Brooklyn people.
It is. It's like Brooklyn domination. That's what I love about it. Vicky, we have you next. What have you got for us for the open?
Hello there. Thanks for letting me read. I've got a small prose poem, but it's in 2 parts. So it's called Burn the Witch, and part 1. Entertainment comes in many forms, thinks Lilith, as she climbs the steps into the dock. Maritis side pulls in a great crowd. People are queuing halfway up the street. Lilith's barrister is male. Tactics. Lights dim after the tea trolley and the ice cream tray come round. The room is packed. They've come to hear her refuse to speak in her own defense. A true star of the silent screen. Fuck them, she thinks. What would you have done? She sees them, magnifying glasses pointing at her, shaking their heads grimly and assessing her body language for guilt. Was the violence proportionate, do you think? Do you think? Part 2. You're not happy, Renee. Not happy at all. Difficult day. Take this jury number and sit over there. Pull up a chair. Coloured lights flash around the dock. The prisoner looks pretty fed up too. Where's the tea trolley? Where's the ice cream tray? Renee's got a sea lion either side of her. They'll clap at anything. The clerk offers her a Bible and a card. I don't want to take the oath. I want to affirm, she says. She did this, she did that. The spatter pattern of the blood indicates this or that. Renee contemplates and wonders which of her many attitudes she should adopt today. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Assessing her body language for guilt. There were so many wonderful moments in that narrative. Thank you for reading it for us on the open.
Pleasure.
And speaking of the Brooklyn Brigade, next we have the Poet Laureate of Badass, Cindy. Scintillating Cindy, what do you got for us this week? It's been too long since we've heard from you. I think you need to unmute yourself. Scintillating Sin?
I'm unmuted.
Perfect.
You can't mute a Brooklyn girl for long.
Never.
We were talking about short poems, and I write a lot of short poems. And believe it or not, in the last week, I actually wrote 2 of them. And I say believe it or not because, like our friend Jonathan Penton, he used to say, I'm not very prolific, so that's me. Anyway, I have 2 not so hot short poems. In the place where I live. In the place where I live, fire smells sweet, and I don't mind the shards of glass under my feet. In the place where I want to live, fire recedes, and the gash in my glass splintered foot never bleeds. The first one, and then a really silly one. Bedtime, 11 p.m., and I'm lying in bed with Mozart and reflux. True story.
Love it. I absolutely love Cindy's short poems, and she's being very modest. I believe that, or I know because I've checked them out, but Cindy and Bob. Sorry, I was
sorry, Cassandra, I was just saying, and we love Ronsard. I can't believe Cindy mentioned that. That was cool.
You can catch her and Bob in the latest Mackinac, right? Both of you are in there. Cindy. Yes, you can. I'll put it in the chat for you, but you should check out the Mackinac Journal to see some of our favorites in there. So we're going to finish the open the only way we can ever finish the open, and that's with Bob, who has his new book coming out soon called Washing the Wings of Angels. And he always has something so tasty for us at the end of the open. And I always say I carry it with me for the rest of the day. It's still 8:30 in the morning here. So I have a day worth of thinking about Bob's sage words. It might be information. It might be a tap dance. It might be an update on the kitchen. But Bob, what have you got?
Something new.
Ooh.
Okay. They remember. They remember the road differently. The zebras were only one way of explaining it. Each word spoken a sapling, not yet firmly rooted. What they understood was never a forest. There was always a knock on the door.
Ooh, that's how you do it, people. That's how you end the open on something that's very, very tasty for the rest of the day. So I'll be waiting for the knocks on my door, Bob. And I'll go back to Mark, and I've put the Mackinac in the chat so you can catch up with Cindy and Bob there as well. Mark.
Fantastic. Well, what a show tonight, right? Well, we had some amazing readers with some amazing work, and well, I think that's the way we want to keep it, of course. Next up is, of course, my birthday show. Hope to see some of you there. But before we leave you tonight, here's something small. It's called First Men on the Moon. With a sense of continuity, planting seeds on a lonely planet, gently turning the soil into the ocean, fishing and smithing and wandering together, planting flags all along the most preferential land, warming eggs side by side upon an open alien fire. Thank you, everybody, for this wonderful reading tonight, and look forward to seeing you next time, August 24. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. Take care, yeah? Lots of love and poetry.
See you for Mark's birthday party. It'll be fun. Bring party hats. Bye.